Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. We are beginning with verses 143 onwards of Surah Anam, which is the sixth surah of the Quran. As you all know, the Quran is composed of 7 chapters, and each of these chapters is arranged in a particular sequence. The first chapter comprises of Surah Fatiha, the first surah, and ends on the fifth surah, which is Surah Maida. And the second chapter, which is the chapter that we are studying today, has 4 surahs: Surah Anam, Surah Araf, Surah Anfal, and Surah Tawbah. And these 4 surahs are arranged chronologically within the chapter. Also, we have discussed this, that within a chapter, the surahs generally occur in pairs. So, Surah Anam and Surah Araf, they occur in pairs. They are counterparts to one another. The themes which are discussed in one in a little concise form, they are discussed in more detail and comprehensive way in the other surah, and hence this relationship. So in verse 143 and before that, the verses that we were discussing, some of the religious innovations of the Quraysh were being discussed, and how they would devote certain offspring, they would dedicate to their own deities, and how they would say that the shares of their deities does not reach God, and the share of God does not reach their deities in case the sacrificed animal has some defect. So we are continuing with that in the same paragraph, and the words are ثمانية أزواج من الضأن اثنين ومن المعز اثنين قل أَالذَّكَرَيْنِ حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين. From these animals take 8 males and females, 2 from the species of the sheep and 2 from the species of the goat. Then ask them, has God forbidden their males or females, or the offspring that is in the wombs of their females? Answer me with some proof if you are truthful. So the implication is that when they also accept that originally these animals were lawful, so from where do the prohibitions arise which these foolish people have invented because of their polytheistic superstitions and practices, and according to which some of the animals are unlawful to eat, and some others can only be eaten by men and not by women, and some can be eaten by both in certain stipulated conditions. So that is why the last part of the verse says, نَبِّئُونِ بِعِلْمٍ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, which means that answer me with some proof if you are truthful. Which means that if you think that this is a lawful prohibition, then the Almighty says, what is the proof for this? So it is not sufficient that their forefathers have regarded them to be prohibited. As we were just discussing, that the Quran here actually says that if there is any stipulation with regard to which they say that certain type of food is forbidden for men and not for women, and some for women and not for men, and some for neither, then there has to be some proof. It cannot be a claim that they make on the basis of their own forefathers. They should bring a clear reason for this that shows that these prohibitions are a consequence of human nature and reason, or if in the case of God's revelation, then there is a messenger of God who has proclaimed their prohibition. So in the absence of any such proof, this would mean that this is innovation on their part, it is a superstition on their part. وَمِنَ الْإِبِلِ اثْنَيْنِ وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ اثْنَيْنِ قُلْ أَالذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ أَمَّا اشْتَمَلَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَرْحَامُ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَىٰ عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا لِيُضِلَّ النَّاسَ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Similarly, 2 from the species of the camel and 2 from the cow. Then ask, has God forbidden their males or females, or the offspring that is in the wombs of their females? Were you present at the time when God directed you about them, about this? Then who can be more cruel than the person who fabricated a lie on God so that he can lead people astray without any knowledge? God shall never guide such cruel people. So as you can see that it is a second warning which is sounded, that if you take these various species from the cow, the goat, the camel, and then you proclaim that their male species are forbidden or their female species are forbidden, or whatever formula that you make about them, how is it that you can verify it? And the last part, or the first part of the second verse, which says, it actually tells us that is wasakum bihaza, which means am kuntum shuhada. Were you present? Were you present when this was being done? In other words, were you present at the time when God directed you about this? The sentence is actually meant to conclusively communicate the final word to them. So the implication is that there is nothing in reason and revelation regarding their claim. And are they saying that they were present when God was prohibiting what they have regarded as forbidden on the basis of their own whims? So basically, it's like telling them that you have regarded certain things to be lawful and others to be unlawful. And when this was being done by God, were you present with God? Obviously, they were not present at the time because there was no such prohibition at all by God himself. They are self-styled. They have been put forth by themselves. And this is one of the reasons of polytheism, that when you start forbidding things which have not been forbidden by God and vice versa, then you are doing God's work. You are entering God's domain. And that is why God says that if you are doing so, then you must present some proof. And in the absence of some proof in this regard, you should clearly understand that you have gone far astray. And then, Inna Allah la yahdil qawm al-zalimeen, God shall never guide such cruel people who fabricate who fabricate falsehood against God. Instead of following the truth, what they are doing is they are following falsehood, and this is something which is absolutely unforgivable. And God will neither guide them nor give them success in the campaign to mislead people. And thus it is a very subtle expression of the success of the call of the truth when it is said that Inna Allah la yahdil qawm al-zalimeen, God shall never guide such unjust people. قُلْ لَا أَجِدُوا فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَيْتَةً أَوْ دَمًا مَسْفُوحًا أَوْ لَحْمَ خِنْزِيرٍ فَإِنَّهُ رِجْسٌ أَوْ فِسْقًا أُحِلَّ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ بِهِ فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Tell them, O Messenger, I find not in what has been revealed to me through inspiration forbidden to a person who eats things which are edible, unless it be carrion or blood poured forth, or the flesh of swine, because these are unclean, or in disobedience to God, animals slaughtered in someone else's name. Yet, even after this, whoever is driven by necessity, neither intending to be desirous nor exceeding the limits, then your Lord is forgiving, ever merciful. So when it is said that I find not what has been revealed to me through inspiration forbidden, and then there's a whole list which has been presented as an exception, that these are the 4 exceptional things about which human intellect could have faltered, and hence God has made it easy for us to understand, and then said that these are the 4 things in which if there was any doubt, then they are categorically prohibited. So originally, this category of pure and wholesome things belong, and people have regarded them to be edibles, and as such have consumed them. So remember, as you can see, ala ta'imin yat'umuhu, for a person who eats and consumes edibles, which this means that actually this list is a category of pure and wholesome things, and people have regarded them to be edibles, and as such have consumed them. So they all relate to people who generally eat such things. And this actually automatically excludes things which are forbidden by man's nature, human being's nature, and people have always thought of them as non-edibles. So, in other words, lions and tigers, elephants, eagles, vultures, kites, snakes, scorpions, all these are non-edibles. So there is not a question of even including them in the list of edibles. In other words, human nature has given its verdict about such things which are non-edibles. It is about such edible things that God says that there could have been some confusion regarding dead meat or blood, or in the case of the fact that should the pig or the swine be eaten or not. But because there could have been any confusion, the Almighty has removed this confusion by saying that yes, they are prohibited. So when it is said daman masfuhan, which means blood poured forth, or it is said that the flesh of the swine, because they are unclean, the actual words, if you look at the text, are فَإِنَّهُ رِجْسٌ, which means that they are unclean. And the pronoun you can use is singular. It refers to all the 3 things, of course, which means maita, daman masfuhan, and lahma khinzir, which means meat of a dead animal, blood poured forth and the meat of the swine. So although the pronoun is singular, but it refers to all these three things. And the reason that it occurs in the singular is that individually, each of these three things is referred to. This is a very common style of the Quran. And then the second, or the second category is mentioned is in the sense that al-fiskan, which is in disobedience to God. And what is that category? That category is animals which are slaughtered in someone else's name than God. And among things regarded as edibles by people, only these four are regarded as prohibited by God. That is what is meant. Why? Because if you look at blood, it induces a person to savagery. Carrion, because blood remains in the veins of an animal that dies of natural death. So basically, blood, you just cannot think of drinking blood or consuming blood, because as we have discussed this, that whatever you consume has an effect on your disposition. And if you consume blood, then it will ultimately and gradually induce people who consume blood to savagery. And the meat of a dead animal is prohibited because this very blood is found in the veins of that animal which dies of natural death. And thirdly, the pig is forbidden because from beasts which are like cattle that eat grass, it is one of those beasts that eats grass, yet it also eats meat like a carnivore. So the pig has two facets. It's a herbivore and it's a carnivore. And so the Almighty has said that its carnivorous disposition dominates its herbivorous disposition, which means that it is more of a meat-eating animal that actually strips open and it tears apart its prey. Now, the fourth category which is mentioned here is animals which are slaughtered in someone else's name than God. Now, this is a blatant act of polytheism and can only be committed by a person who is rebellious to God, because how can you dedicate an animal slaughtered to someone else than God? So in other words, even if that animal is absolutely pure and wholesome and is slaughtered in the right way by doing the zabiha slaughter, but if it is dedicated to someone else than God, then as you can see, the words are al fisqan, this is a disobedience to God, then this also is prohibited. And then this condition which is mentioned, and is an exception, فَمَنِ اسْتُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. It means that whoever is driven by necessity, neither intending to be desirous nor exceeding the limits, then your Lord is forgiving and merciful. So, in other words, if there is this compulsion in compelling circumstances, you have nothing but to consume what has been prohibited, then at least it should not be a desire found in you to consume it. It is something of a necessity. It is something to save your life. And also, it should be consumed in that proportion which is sufficient for sustenance. It should not be made a whole feast out of it. So that is what the غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ part means, and فَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ would mean that Lord is forgiving and ever merciful. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا كُلَّ ذِي زُفُرٍ وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ وَمِنَ الْغَنَمِ حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ شُحُومَهُمَا إِلَّا مَا حَمَلَتْ ظُهُورُهُمَا أَوِ الْحَوَايَا أَوْ مَا اخْتَلَطَ بِعَزْمٍ ذَلِكَ جَزَيْنَاهُمْ بِبَغْيِهِمْ وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ فَإِنْ كَذَّبُوكَ فَقُلْ رَبُّكُمْ ذُو رَحْمَةٍ وَاسِعَةٍ وَلَا يُرَدُّ بَأْسُهُ عَنِ الْقَوْمِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. If they deny you even after this, then say, very vast is the mercy of your Lord. But at the same time, this also is a reality that if the respite given by him expires, then it would not be possible to ward off his punishment from the wrongdoers. So now the reason for prohibiting certain animals on the Jews, al-lazina hadu, is mentioned. So when it is said, haramna kulla zi zufur, said we had forbidden all animals with nails, it actually refers to animals whose hooves are not split. The hooves are not split and they have nails and are in the form of a hoof and have nails on the frontal part. So the nails, they are not split, and the hooves are not split, and there are nails on the frontal part. And it is precisely for this reason that the Torah forbids the camel, the coney, and the rabbit, because these are animals whose hooves are not split and they have nails on the hooves. But the Quran says that this prohibition is not an original prohibition. It was it was actually prohibited because of the fact that they were indulging in baghi, as the Quran says, which is rebelliousness. Also it is said that وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ وَمِنَ الْغَنَمِ حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ شُحُومَهُمَا, that we had forbidden all animals with nails and the fat of the goat and the cattle as well. So the fat of the goat and the cattle as well was prohibited, except that part of the fat that adhered to their backs or intestines. So this type of fat which did not adhere to their, you can say that all parts on which fat was, the fat clung to the animal were prohibited except the backs and their intestines. So the fat which was found on the backs and the intestines, which were not prohibited. Or as the Quran says, أَوْ مَخْتَلَتْ بِعَزْمٍ, or that was left adhering to a bone. So the fat which was adhering to a bone or their backs or their intestines, that was an exception. It was not prohibited. And then the Quran says, ذَلِكَ جَزَيْنَاهُمْ بِبَغْيِهِمْ. This punishment was given because of their rebelliousness. Otherwise, all the fat, wherever it was found in the animal's body, was allowed, should have been allowed, but only specific parts of the animal's body on which fat clung to were allowed. And the Quran says this is because of their rebelliousness. وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ, which means that God Almighty says that we are absolutely truthful in our claim, because if you look at the Bible, or in fact the Old Testament, you'll find exactly the same prohibition in the book of Leviticus, which is mentioned very clearly that these animals have been prohibited. فَإِن كَذَّبُوكَ فَقُلْ رَبُّكُمْ ذُو رَحْمَةٍ وَاسِعَةٍ وَلَا يُرَدُّ بَأْسُهُ عَنِ الْقَوْمِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. That if they deny you after this, then say, very vast is the mercy of your Lord. That is something that which this verse expressly says. But as you can see, the important part that I'd like to reiterate here is that things which were absolutely allowed were disallowed, as the Quran says, because of the rebelliousness of the Jews. In other words, these things were neither impure nor were they unwholesome, nor were they originally prohibited. They were prohibited because of their arrogance. And the scriptures of the Bible mention this rebelliousness at so many places. If at all, you would recall in Surah Baqarah, the heifer incident cited is an example. When God forbade these things to them, He promised to send an unlettered prophet to them. And if they professed faith in Him, then He would lift these heavy burdens of prohibitions from them. And now the time for that had come, that the prophet had come to lift these burdens and to do away with these prohibitions. But they did not recognize this prophet, or in fact they did, but they were absolutely adamant in denying it. And when God says that we are absolutely truthful, وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ, the purpose is that He is truthful in not just the expression of reality. It's not just that. It also indicates the reverse, which is that His adversaries are liars. وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ is God saying that I am speaking the truth. The opposite is that my opponents or my adversaries or my rivals, they are not speaking the truth and they are lying. So the implication is that God is truthful in whatever He has stated about the religion of Abraham and the nation of Abraham. And the Sharia of the Israelites and the Jews and the Christians who are indulging in this frivolous talk are absolute liars. These people are absolute liars. And when it is said that it would not be possible to ward off His punishment from the wrongdoers, this actually tells us that God's punishment is something which, when is decided by Him to visit these people, then none can hold His hand. No one, not even any of the intercessors or the deities that they worship, have any such power. سَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكْنَا وَلَا آبَاؤُنَا وَلَا حَرَّمْنَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ كَذَلِكَ كَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ حَتَّى ذَاقُوا بَأْسَنَا قُلْ هَلْ عِنْدَكُمْ مِنْ عِلْمٍ فَتُخْرِجُوهُ لَنَا إِنْ تَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ وَإِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا تَخْرُصُونَ قُلْ فَلِلَّهِ الْحُجَّةُ الْبَالِغَةُ فَلَوْ شَاءَ لَهَدَاكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. In response to this, these polytheists will now say, had God willed, neither we nor our forefathers would have indulged in polytheism, nor would we have declared anything as unlawful. In a similar way, those before them had also denied until they tasted our punishment. Ask them, do you have any knowledge which you can present before us? In reality, you are merely following conjecture and only make speculations. Tell them, God only has for you a conclusive argument. Then also think that had He willed, He would have gathered all of you and would never have cast you in polytheism and misguidance. So, when it is said that no one could have declared anything as unlawful, this actually means that idolaters would say that they were when they were cornered, and they would say this, that, well, had God wanted, we would never have indulged in this. Our forefathers would have never indulged in this. I mean, this was the only reply they would give. And in reply, of course, God would have said, or God said, well, you had the choice to make so. God did not create people in order to compel them to guidance. If your forefathers did not accept it, and if you're not accepting it, it's your own will. God is not going to compel you to guidance. So this was an answer that they would give when they would get irritated and when they would get cornered. And they would say, well, had God will, we would have been rightly guided, or our forefathers would have been rightly guided. So God says, well, you had the choice to make and you made the wrong choice. So they would say that if God has not stopped them, then it meant that whatever they are doing was in accordance with the will of God and the command of God. So that is what has been vehemently negated here. And this beautiful verse, verse 149, when it says, "Qul falillahi al-hujjatul baligha," tell them, God only has for you a conclusive argument. In the scheme of God, which is in currency in this world, to test them, there is no compulsion on them. Only a sound argument that conquers their hearts and minds is needed. He does not interfere in the freedom of will of people in this matter. He just gives them the arguments. He gives them the reasons. He has given them the liberty to either accept them or to reject them. This is the way of God. He will make things clear. He will provide enough and sufficient proofs, and then leave them to the people to decide and use their intellect. They cannot proffer this argument that had God willed, you would have been rightly guided. God says that I'm not going to force my guidance on you. You have to choose guidance. I'll just make my guidance clear. It is now your choice to accept it or reject it. So He would have guided all of you and would never have cast you in polytheism and misguidance. This is stated for the sake of accepting their premise, that had God willed something, He would have willed the guidance of people or forced them to set up partners with Him or compel them to declare as unlawful what He had regarded as lawful. So in other words, I mean, it is like accepting what they are saying and saying this fact that had God willed something, it would not have been to make them associate partners with Himself. Yes, it would have been to declare some of them or compelling some of them to do what is right. So in other words, had God willed something, He would have willed the guidance of people. He would not have forced them to set up partners with Him or compel them to declare as unlawful what they had regarded as unlawful. So if anything, God would have maybe done so, but He would never have allowed you to make partners with God. He would have forced you. So if He did not use force in allowing you to do whatever you like regarding polytheism, how could He have done this? How could He have made you guide? How could He guided you forcefully, or in a sense that you would not be given the choice to be guided yourself? قل هلم شهداءكم الذين يشهدون أن الله حرم هذا فإن شهدوا فلا تشهد معهم ولا تتبع أهواء الذين كذبوا بآياتنا والذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وهم بربهم يعدلون. Tell them, bring forth those witnesses of yours who testify on the basis of knowledge and reason that God has regarded this thing to be prohibited. Then if they stand up for false witness with stubbornness, do not bear this witness with them, and do not follow the desires of those who have denied our revelations, who do not believe in the hereafter, and associate partners with their Lord. So, they should not follow the desires which have led these people to the quagmire of polytheism and religious innovation. These innovations are called the desires, as you can see. These are the desires because these are the innovations that spring from these desires. And the reason for this is that what is not corroborated by knowledge and intellect can only be corroborated by desires. So when it is said that, come, I shall tell you what your Lord has forbidden to you, the implication is that the things prohibited by their Lord are not the ones they regard as prohibited because of their superstitions. The real prohibitions are the ones He has designated in the Sharia. And the religion on which Abraham had left them contained all these prohibitions. They have remained prohibited in all the Sharias. And that is how it would be going on further as well. So, وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا وَالَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ وَهُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ يَعْدِلُونَ. Then if they stand up for false evidence with stubbornness, do not bear this witness with them and do not follow the desires of those who have denied our revelations. In other words, this is something that has to be done, that people must not in any way associate partners with God. They should not bear this witness with them. And if they do so, then they will be doing something which is absolutely a part of polytheism. Now, as far as polytheism is concerned, Ustaz Ghamidi, while describing this creed, has said that it actually refers to two things. One, to regard someone to have the same genre as that of God, or to regard God to have the same genre as someone. So you are basically associating someone with his being. Or, in the second case, to regard someone to have a role in creation or running the affairs of the creatures of God, and in this manner make someone God's spare to some extent or another. And if you look at the examples of the first type of polytheism, in which you regard someone to be from someone, then of course the Christians and the polytheists of Arabia, because the Christians regarded Jesus to be the Son of God, and some of them regarded Mary to be the Mother of God. And about the angels, we know that the idolaters would regard the angels to be the daughters of God. And another example of this is the belief of Wahdatul Wujud, which means that oneness of being, and that the universe is one, and the rest of all the rest is God's manifestation or His physical manifestations. And as far as the second is concerned, in which you give ownership of Khalq wal Amr, of creation and running the affairs with Him, other creatures which run the affairs with Him. Examples of this type of polytheism is the Trimurti of Hinduism, in which we have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So these are basically three separate individuals who are helping God in running the affairs of the universe, and this is the example of second type of polytheism. قُلْ تَعَالَوْا أَتْلُ مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Tell them, come, I shall tell you what your Lord has forbidden to you. Do not associate anything with Him. Treat your parents with kindness. Never be unkind to them. And kill not your children for fear of poverty. We provide you also and shall provide them too. And do not even go near vulgarities, whether they are open or hidden. And do not kill without justification any soul forbidden by God. These are the things God directs you to so that you use your intellect. So these are the things God directs you to so that you use your intellect. So in other words, one of the things which God says here is that after His own right, the right is the right of the parents. And about this, we often find the Quran discussing the parental rights, the right after the rights of God. And what it says is, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, that treat your parents with kindness. And then it is also said that do not kill your children for fear of poverty. And that is again something which God says that if you're killing your children for fear of poverty, then don't forget that God is providing you, He's going to provide your children also. You're not the providers of your children. It is basically God who is the provider of children as well. And that is why we know when it is said that لَا تَقْرَبُوا الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ, it actually says that do not indulge in any vulgarity, whether it is open or hidden. In other words, whether it is done in an open manner or whether it is done in a hidden manner, none of these vulgarities is allowed in any way. And similarly, you must not kill any innocent person. The only way and the only case in which someone can be killed is when he himself is guilty of killing someone or is guilty of spreading disorder in the land, and that too is something which is the prerogative of the state authorities, and no one individually has any such authority. It cannot be in any way be part of these vulgarities. And so one of the reasons of this was that they thought that since a woman was not an earning hand, I mean, we can go back to how they would bury alive their infant girls. Remember, the directive of killing their children has been repeated at other instances also. And we come to know from the later surah of the Quran that it was basically the girl child who was buried alive. And they would think that because she is not an earning hand when she grows up, so why should their burden of upbringing be taken upon them? And this is a heinous crime which the Quran has said, and that is why it is said that this is something that must not be in any way indulged in. And when it is said that do not indulge in vulgarities, whether they are open or hidden, what is meant is that extramarital sex is forbidden, whether done openly or in private. In other words, you cannot indulge this in this sexual deviation, whether you do it in public or whether you do it in private. And the way the word fawahish has been used in plurality, Ustad Ghamidi says that it covers homosexuality and bestiality and all such vulgar, sinful acts. So it's not just fornication or adultery, which the Quran is forbidding here when it says, La taqrabul fawahish. So any act of fawahish, which includes bestiality, which means having sex with animals, and homosexuality, both are covered in this word. And when it is said, don't go near them, la taqrabu, it means that things that can lead people to these vulgar acts, even those have to be avoided. And the foremost, of course, of them is pornography or indulging in such things that can actually take you and lead you towards this. And then it is said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالِ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُ وَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا نُكَلِّفُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَاعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى وَبِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ أَوْفُوا ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. And do not go near the wealth of an orphan except in the way that is better for him until he reaches maturity, and weigh with honesty and full measure. We do not burden a soul with more than it can bear. And when you speak the truth, even if the matter is about your relatives. وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَاعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. So if you have to speak the truth, it has to be the truth, even if it is about your relatives. And fulfill God's province. وَبِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ أَوْفُوا. These are the things God directs you to so that you receive a reminder. So in other words, all these basic moral teachings are something that you already know. It is something that is ingrained in you. God does not burden you with things which are beyond your reach or beyond your capacity. You have to speak the truth, even if it goes against the interest of your relatives. And the covenant with God, which means that the promise that you have made with God regarding His Sharia, regarding obeying His Sharia, has to be fulfilled. Similarly, weighing and measuring correctly with correct scales is something that has to be done. We know the Arabs were a nation given to trading as well, and that is something which was also a part of the warning. And when the Almighty has said that we do not burden a soul with more than it can bear, then this is like an on-the-spot warning. The implication is that whatever directives have been given by God are not beyond the capacity of people. He has given them while fully regarding their abilities and natures, and they should not think that these directives are something which cannot be fulfilled by them. God has made human nature in a way that you have to follow what God says, because whatever He says is not beyond our own capacity. And these are the things God directs you to do, because this is how we will receive a reminder. وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And God has stated, only this is my straight path. So follow it alone and do not tread on other paths, lest they lead you away from which He has directed you, so that you may remain secure from His punishment. So these are the closing words, and they once again sound a warning that this is the straight path of God. If you follow this path, it will lead you directly towards paradise, directly towards the pleasure of God. And if you start treading on other paths, and these other paths, these are side tracks, they will lead you away from monotheism and lead you into the jungle of polytheism. So with this, I come to an end to today's discussion on these verses. Inshallah, we'll continue our discussion on the remaining verses in our next session. But for the moment, if you have any questions regarding the passage that we have discussed, you may raise them now.
What were the underlying reasons for prohibiting some animals allowed for consumption by God for a particular gender by the people at the time of revelation of the Quran, and why did God take it so seriously? If a person or a group of persons on their own prohibit some edibles for themselves and it is their own choice, what bad did it bring about that God had to address through Wahi?
So you see, first of all, the first part of the question is very important. The things which were already allowed, lawful and legal, like the camel or the fat of the camel that did not cling to the backs or the intestines or to the parts that have been just stated, the Quran has made the reason evidently clear. It says, "Zalika jazainahum bibaghihim," that we prohibited this part, which was already something that was quite lawful and legal, because of their arrogance and because of their rebelliousness. They were a people given to rebelliousness. They would not accept the verdict of God, and they would try to corner God, and as a result, the noose of their Sharia would be tightened around their own necks every time they would keep asking these questions. And this led God to actually prohibit these things to them. So, in other words, this is something that you can see in the Old Testament also, that their continuous questioning and cross-questioning, which actually seemed that they wanted to evade the directive in the first place by raising different questions, by pointing out objections. Their purport was that somehow or the other, this directive is taken away from them. So this tightened the noose against them or around their necks, and things that were allowed and totally wholesome for them, they became more prohibited, and more a circle of their prohibition, they actually, it went stricter and stricter. And this is one of the punishments that were given to them because of their behavior. And the second part of your question, that what bad does it bring? Well, the thing is that all those things which have been prohibited, the reason for their prohibition is that everything that you eat basically has an effect on your own tazkiyah, on your own physical self and your disposition. The things that have been prohibited because their consumption has an effect on your own system. So, as we just explained earlier on, the blood that we have been stopped to consume, the reason for that is that consuming blood is something that will induce humankind to savagery, and it has. People who are cannibals, we know that they are savages. So, blood was prohibited because it has an effect on our own disposition. Similarly, animals which are carnivores and which split open or they actually tear apart their prey, they were prohibited because such acts of savagery would have entered humankind as well. And you can see those nations which have taken to consumption of lions and all such carnivorous animals, which tear apart their prey and they eat their meat in such a way that again that savagery, that beastliness comes into their mannerisms as well, and hence it propagates to their later generations as well. So this is the reason of this prohibition.
Jews were prohibited to eat, from eating animals with nails on their hoofs, like so horses and donkeys were included in there. So when that Allah said, I told them to not to eat because of their violence, and now it is not prohibited for you. So these days is donkey and horse eatable for us? Is it halal for us?
I mean, there are certain animals about which the Almighty has left it to our own personal taste. And therefore, if they are consumed, there could be things about which we cannot say that they are haram per se. So they have been left to your own natural disposition. And because human beings generally use mules and donkeys and horses for their transportation, so therefore, generally they have been used for this purpose and they are not used for consumption. However, I mean, there is not a red line or there is not a mark of prohibition, as in the case of the rest of the animals that we have just described. So yes, if in some cases people feel like consuming them, they do not bear the label of absolute prohibition.
Were they not prohibited? Were they not allowed in wars when the people did not have anything else to eat?
I should assume so. I mean, you might remember there were more camels in Arabia than there were horses. So they generally consumed their camels than their horses, because they would be used for their transportation for other means as well. But in a sense that you are asking, that if they consume their animals like horses and mules for for meat consumption, then they could have done so. And if they had done so, this would not have been wrong.
Thank you, sir. Jazakallah.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. So I had a question. So pig does eat its own filth. Is that one of the reasons that it's prohibited also?
No, that is not. That is what is commonly said. You see, this is a reason that people have worked out for themselves. We must go by the Quran. So the Quran tells us that basically it is these what it calls as anam. That these four-legged animals which consume grass, and they are something which we human beings consume, and they eat vegetation. We derive from that basically it is such animals that have been allowed. As far as prohibition is concerned, all those animals which produce savagery or the element of carnivorousness in us are the ones that have been prohibited. So that is why lions and tigers and vultures and crows are not eaten. Now the pig, the question was, because it eats grass and vegetation, it also eats meat. So is it a herbivore or is it a carnivore? Because if you look at it as a herbivore, it should be allowed because it consumes grass. And if you look at it as a carnivore, it should be not allowed because it consumes meat. But because it consumes both these, the question could have been that which nature is more dominant? Is it more a herbivore or more a carnivore? So the Quran gave its verdict that it is more of a carnivore that tears open its prey and also consumes meat. So in other words, it has classified the pig as a carnivore, and all carnivores are prohibited.
And that is why, so whatever we...
And the reason for the carnivores, yes, the reason for carnivores to be prohibited is that whatever you eat has an effect on your disposition. And if you eat such animals...
Of it eating its filth is not the truth then?
Not the truth. It's something that people have conjectured. It is something that could be true, but that is not the reason for its prohibition.
Islamic Dr. Verse 146 end. It says, Inna lasadiqoon.
Yeah.
And the Urdu translation of Ghamidi Sahib says, Aur hum bilkul sache hain. Now, God saying this, I think he must have been pretty furious. I got scared when I first read this verse, because he sounds Allah Ta'ala saying about himself, Aur hum bilkul sache hain, means this is a very, very furious rage that God...
Yes, that is why. So that is why I explained that it is the opposite that is implied here, that we are absolutely truthful in our claim and you are absolute liars. So basically, it is the opposite of this which is being implied here, that since we are absolutely truthful, so whatever claim we are making that these animals are prohibited and these were not, and this is how we consume meat and this is how we allow our females to consume and others in which the males can consume, these are your self-made claims and they have no truth. And we are absolutely truthful in what we are trying to tell you, which that's what God is saying, and hence what you are saying is an absolute lie. So it says Samaniyat Azwaj. Samaniya is 8. Azwaj means species. So you take 8 species. Minaz Zan is 9, which means from the species of the sheep. Zan is sheep. Take 2. Waminal Mars is 9. So Mars is goat. So take from the goat Isnain 2. So Isnain is 2. So amongst these 8 species, take 2 each, male and female, from the species of the goat and from the species of this sheep. And then ask them, Kul, ask them, A'az Zakarain, Harramallah, has God forbidden their males or females? Zakarain, Harrama, Zakarain means males, Harrama prohibited, or Unsayain, their females. So has God prohibited their males or their females? Remember, earlier on it was stated that they would regard their males or females to be prohibited in a certain sense. And when the animal would be stillborn, then they would have another view about it. So God is actually asking them that if you look at this, these species, if you take 8 of them, of course, that would imply 2 from each genre. And of course, because of the fact that these are 2 species, there will be 8 of them. Then God says that ask them, has has God forbidden their males or females? Or ishtamalat alayhi would mean what is found, arham, in the wombs, al-unsayain, of their female animals. Ammashtamalat alayhi arham al-unsayain would mean what is the offspring or the children or the fetus that is found in the raham or the womb of the females. And then nabbi'uni, anabbi'uni, tell me, bi'ilmin, with knowledge, in, if, kuntum, you, sadiqeen, truthful. So tell me with knowledge. Of course, knowledge here would mean proof. Tell me with proof if you are truthful. Wa, and, minal, from, ibil, camel, isnain, 2. And so take from the camel also 2, which means they're male and female. Wa minal bakari isnain, and bakar is cow. From the cow also take isnain, take 2, which means they're male and the female. And then the same question, qul, ask them, zakarain harrama amil unsayain. Is zakarain, their males, harrama, forbidden, or unsayain, their females. So have their males been forbidden? Or in the word, has God forbidden their males or their females? Mashtamalat alayhi arhamul unsayain. Or what the arham contain, or what the wombs of the unsayain or the wombs of their females contain. Exactly the same verse as the previous one, with a different species of animal. Earlier on, we know the cow and the sheep and the cow, or sheep and the goat were discussed, and now we have al-ibil and bakar, which is the cow and the camel. So all these 4 animals were very common in Arabia, and hence the example has been given from them. Am kuntum shuhada, or kuntum, you, shuhada, present, is when, wassakumullah, when God directed you, bihaza, about this. Fa, therefore, man, who, azlamu, unjust, mimman, from among, iftara, he who ascribes falsehood, Allah, upon God, kaziba, a lie, liyudilla, so that he can lead astray, annas, people, bighayri ilm, without knowledge. So, who can be more unjust than he who concocts a falsehood upon God? Iftara, concocts. Yudilla, upon God. Kaziba, upon God. Allah is God and kaziba is untruth or a lie. So who is more unjust than the person who concocts a lie upon God? Iftara, kaziban Allah is the correct, is the construction, for which that would mean who concocts a falsehood upon God. And what is the reason for that? لِيُذِلَّ النَّاسِ, so that he can lead away people, بِغَيْرِ ilm, without any proof. Inna Allah, indeed God, la, not, yahdi, guides, al-qawm, people, zalimeen, unjust. Indeed, God does not guide people who are unjust. Qul, ask or tell them, la, not, ajidu, I find, fi, in, ma uhiya, what has been revealed, ilayya, to me, muharraman, that is prohibited, ala, upon, ta'imin, a person who eats, yat'amuhu, food. So I do not find in what has been revealed to me through wahi something which is forbidden. And what is that? Illa an yakuna maytatan, except if it is maytatan. Illa, except an yakuna, it is maytatan, means the meat of a dead animal. Aw, or daman, blood, masfuhan, spilled, or blood which is spilled. Aw, or lahma khinzir. Lahma is meat. Khinzir is the pig or the swine. So the meat of the swine. And then it is said, فَإِنَّهُ ritz, because this is ritz, this is unclean, this is filthy. Aw, or fisqan, in disobedience to God. Uhilla li ghayrillahi bihi. Uhilla li ghayrillahi bihi would mean animals which are slaughtered in someone other than God. Uhilla means slaughtered, li ghayrillah. Uhilla actually means to take the name of someone other than God. Uhilla li ghayrillah is a composite construction that you pronounce someone except God, someone other than God, when you sacrifice an animal. Fa, therefore, man, he, uzdurra, or if you join this, you'll read it as famanisturra. So therefore he, uzdurra, is compelled, ghayra baghin, without intending any desire. Ghayra baghin, without intending desire. Wa, and la adin, intending exceeding the limits. Fa inna rabbaka, therefore indeed your Lord, Ghafur, forgiving, Rahim, ever merciful. So faman isturra ghayra baghin wala aad would mean that whoever is compelled such that ghayra baghin, he does not intend or does not cross the limits, then your Lord is forgiving and merciful. This would mean that if in such a situation they consume the meat of these forbidden animals, then it is fine, because now you are pushed by necessity or compelled. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ هَادُوا, wa, and Allah upon الَّذِينَ, those who hadu became Jews. So haramna means we prohibited, kulla, every, zi zufur, animals which have nails. Zufur means nails, and zi is someone who has nails. So upon the Jews we forbade every animal which has nails. Wa, and minal baqar, from among the cow, wal ghanam, and the cattle, harramna, we forbade, alayhim, upon them, shukumuhuma, their fat, illa ma hamalat, except what was carried, zuhuruhuma, by their backs, awil hawaya, or their intestines, aw bakhtalata bi azmin, or that were attached to their bones. Ikhtalata, attached. Azm is bones. So, except that which was carried by their bones or their intestines, so the backs or the intestines, or that was mixed, ikhtalata means mixed, bi azmin, bones, or the fat that was mixed with their bones. So except for these types, every fat that was found in other parts of the body of an animal was forbidden if that animal was a cow or a cattle. Zalika, this is because jazaynahum, we punished them, bibaghihim, because of their rebelliousness. Because baghihim, baghi is actually rebelliousness and him is they, so their rebelliousness. Wa, and inna, we, lasadiqoon, are absolutely truthful. Fa, therefore, in, if, kazzabuka, they refute you, they deny you. Fa, therefore, qul, say, Rabbukum, your Lord, zu rahma, is one who has mercy. Wasi'a, that is wide, which means that is infinite and which is all pervading. Wa, and la, not, yuraddu, turn away, ba'suhu, his punishment, anil, from, al-qawm, nation, al-mujrimeen, who are unjust. Wala yuraddu, cannot be turned away, ba'suhu, his punishment, anil qawm al-mujrimeen, from the cruel nation. So, from a cruel nation, no one can turn away the punishment. Sayaqul allazina ashraku, sayaqul, indeed they will say, allazina, those who ashraku, committed polytheism, law sha Allah, had God wanted, law, had, sha'a, wanted, Allah, God. So had God wanted, ma, not, ashrakna, we would have committed polytheism, wala aba'una, and nor our own forefathers. So neither would we have committed polytheism nor our forefathers. Wa, and la, not, harramna, we would have prohibited min shay, anything. So in other words, what is being said is that very soon these people who have committed polytheism will say that had God wanted, we would not have indulged in polytheism, nor would have our forefathers indulged in polytheism, and neither would we have prohibited anything. La harramna, we would have prohibited. La, not, min shay'in, anything. Kazalika, in this way. Kazzabal lazina, kazzaba, lied. Allazina, those who, min qablihim, who were before them. So in this very manner, those who were before them, they also lied. Hatta, until, Zaku, they tasted. Ba'suna, our punishment. So those before them, they also lied like this until they tasted our punishment. Hatta, until. Zaku, tasted. Zaiqa is from the same word. Ba'suna, our punishment. Kul, say or ask them. Hal, is indakum with you. Min ilmin, from knowledge. Fatukhrijuhu, so that you can bring it out. Lana, for us. So, ask them, do you have any knowledge which you can present before us? Kul hal indakum min ilmin, do you have any knowledge fatukhrijuhu lana, which you can present to us? In tattabi'una, not. Tattabi'una, you follow. Illa, except. Zan, conjecture. Not you follow except conjecture would mean you do not follow anything except conjecture. Wa in, wa and in, not. Antum, you. La, except. Takhrusun. So takhrusun means conjecture. So you not accept conjecture would mean that you only do conjecture. Qul, say. Fa, therefore, lillah, for God. Hujja, argument. Valigha, conclusive. So say, only God has for you a conclusive argument. Fa, therefore, law sha'a, had he wanted. Lahadakum, he would have guided you. Ajma'in, all. So had he wanted, he would have guided all of you. Qul, say, halumma, come. Shuhada'akum, your, or halumma actually would mean bring forth or tell them to come. Shuhada'akum would mean your witnesses. So tell them, halumma shuhada'akum, bring forth your witnesses. Allazina, those who, yashhaduna, those who bear witness, anna, that Allah, God, harrama, has prohibited, haza, this. So tell them, bring forth those witnesses who bear witness that God has regarded this thing to be prohibited. Again, this is like telling them that if you regard these things to be prohibited, then bring your witnesses. Fa, and, in, if, shahidu, they bear witness. Fala, therefore not. Tashhad, bear witness, ma'ahum, with them. So if they bear witness, do not bear witness with them. So in other words, if they bear false witness, then you should not bear witness with them because they are telling an absolute lie. Wa, and, la, not. Tattabe, you follow. Ahwa, desires. Allazina, those who. Kazzabu, denied. Bi ayatina, our revelations. So wala tattabe ahwa, do not follow the desires. So ahwa is the plural of hawa, and hawa means desire. So do not follow the desires of those who have denied our revelations. Wa, and. Allazina, those who. La, not. Yu'minuna, believe in. Bil akhirate, in the hereafter. Wa, and. Hum, they. Bi rabbihim, with their Lord. Ya'adilun, associate partners. And they are the ones who do not believe in the hereafter. La yu'minuna bil akhirah. Wa, and. Hum bi rabbihim ya'adilun, they associate partners with God. Qul, ta'alaw atlu ma harrama rabbukum alaykum. Qul, tell them, ta'alaw, come. Atlu, I shall recite. Ma, that. Harrama rabbukum, that which your God has prohibited. Alaykum, upon you. Say or tell them, come. I shall recite to you what God has prohibited upon you. And what is that? First thing is, Allah tushriku bihi shay'a. Do not associate anything with Him. Do not ascribe partners with Him. Do not associate anything with them. Wa, and. Bil walidain, with your parents. Ihsana, be kind. And be kind to your parents. Wa, and. La, not. Taqtulu, kill. Awladakum, your children. Min, because of imlaq, poverty. Do not kill your children because of poverty. Nahnu, we. Narzukukum, we give you rizq, we give you sustenance. Wa iyyahum, and them too. So, do not kill your children because of poverty, because we provide you and we also provide them. Wa, and. La, not. Taqrabu, go near. Al-fawahish, vulgarities. Ma zahara minha, what is apparent among them. Wama batan, and what is forbidden. So do not go near vulgarities, whether they are open or whether they are hidden, whether they are public or whether they are private. Ma zahara, what is open. Minha, among them. Wama batan, and what are hidden. Of course, there's the same word hidden, suppressed. Wama batana minha, which means whatever is done in secret. Wa, and la, not. Taqtulu, kill. An-nafs, a soul. Allati, he who. Harramallah, has been regarded as sacred by God. Harrama, regarded sacred. Allah, by God. Illa, except. Bil haq, for a reason. Or some just reason. Zalikum, this is. Wasakum bihi. Zalikum wasakum bihi, that these are the things about which God asks you to follow. Wasakum bihi, to ask you to follow. La'allakum, so that you, taqilun, use your intellect. Wa, and. La, not. Taqrabu, go near. Mal al-yatim, wealth of the orphans. Illa, except. Billati hiya ahsan, except the way which is good. Hatta, until. Yabluga, reaches. Ashuddahu, maturity. So do not go near the wealth of the orphans until that orphan reaches maturity. Yabluga ashuddahu, yabluga, reaches. Ashuddahu, maturity. Wa, and. Awfu, awfu would mean give full. Al-kail, measure. So weigh with full measure. Wal Meezan, and scales. Bil qist, with justice. So in other words, weigh and measure with justice. La, not. Nukallifu, we make responsible. Nafsan, any person. Illa, except. Wus'aha, whatever is in his capacity. So we do not make any soul responsible of something which is beyond his capacity. Illa wus'aha would mean it is only within his capacity that we make that person responsible of a directive. Wa, and. Iza, when. Qultum, you say something. Fa'adilu, be just. So when you say something, be just, be truthful. Wa, and. Law, even if. Kana, it is. Za qurba, your relatives. So say the truth, even if it is against your relatives. Wa bi ahdillahi, and about God's promise, awfu, fulfill. So fulfill the promise of God. Zalikum, this. Wasakum bihi, God directs you. La'allakum, so that you, tazakkarun, are reminded. So God directs you to this so that you are reminded. Wa, and. Anna, that. Haza, this. Sirati, my way. Mustaqima, straight. And this is my straight way. Fattabi'uhu, fa, therefore, ittabi'uhu, follow it. Wa, and. La, not. Tattabi'u, follow. As-subul, the ways. And so do not follow different ways. Follow my way, which is the straight way. Hada sirati mustaqima fattabi'uhu. Follow that way and do not follow other ways. Fatafarraka, so that fatafarraka bikum, lest that they lead you astray. An sabilihi, an from sabilihi. Sabil is way, he, God. So if you follow different ways, fatafarraka bikum, they will lead you astray from the ways of God. Zalikum, this. Wasakum, directs you. Bihi, to it. This is what God directs you to. La'allakum, so that you, tattaqoon, become pious or become secure. So God directs you to these things so that you become secure. So with this we come to an end to our idiomatic and literal translation as well. We have finished verse 43 to 153. Although the caption at the top has been erroneously written, it should be 143 to 153. So now if you have any questions regarding this literal or idiomatic translation or in general about the passage or in the absence of that, any general question, you may raise that.
Dr. Saleem, I have a chat question asking if there's any kind of cheese that is haram.
No, unless explicitly stated that if it is made of pork or some material that uses pork, it should not be regarded as haram.
Yes, my question is regarding verse 143. And
Yes.
In this regard, there must have been some reasons that people at that time, while during the revelation of these verses, they would not allow consumption of some halal animals for a particular gender, as it was also asked previously. And if it was some personal choice, then why did God take it very seriously that why did they, what God allowed, and they won't allow for some particular gender, like for example, and if a person or a group of person on their own won't eat some halal animal, then it's their own choice. What bad it brings about that God had to address through Wahi in this verse
Yes,
143.
so you see, when you regard something to be prohibited and you say that this is religiously prohibited, then you're doing this, you're doing something which only God can do. You see, religious innovations, they arise when you say that, well, this is something which is religiously allowed or disallowed. So God says that this is only my prerogative. I have the authority to allow certain things and disallow certain things. When you jump into this sphere in my domain and you start making these value judgments that such and such things are allowed or disallowed, then what you're doing is you're trying to copy me. You are doing tasks which I only am authorized to do. So you're jumping into my domain. And that is why it is called shirk. It is polytheism. So there are certain things which only God can regard to be correct or incorrect. So what people are doing is they are entering into the domain of God.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem.
Clarity further I would be needing. If this is something religious, as you said, and it's the domain of God, and God won't like that someone enters into its domain, but I mean, apart from the people at that time, they won't allow some particular like animals that are eatable, but they won't allow. Like for example, for some gender, like as these verses they mention, what were the reasons? I mean, why do people? What were whether those were the religious reasons? What were the reasons that they won't allow? And eventually God has to intervene.
So you see, polytheism is something that comes into being from various contradictions and at the same time by ascribing a certain amount of authority to deities. So these deities would act on all sorts of superstitions. So you see, superstitions don't have any reasoning behind them. That is why they are called superstitions, that they are all conjecture, they're all speculations. So out of their own whims, as you can see, the Quran says ahwa, which means their own desires. And ahwa is basically the reason why things become a bid'at or religious innovation, because it's not that they have any logical answer towards them. These are just whims and desires. So God says that if you start doing this on the basis of whims and desires, then all this religion will end up an amalgam of superstitions and conjecture and speculation. So basically, you see, this is this nature of speculation that you start doing things which have no logical basis, which cannot be communicated. These are just personal likes or dislikes, and then you make a whole sharia out of them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. So just, asking on the same thought process, there's so many things, Dr. Saleem, which are not haram. And, there's so many of us, when, kind of wanting to stop someone, we'll go down that domain of saying, this is wrong, this is because of misinterpretation. So does it fall in the same category then?
Like, give an example.
I don't know, when people are trying to stop their children from doing things, or when they are doing a fatwa, Maulvis say all the time things are halal, haram. So, and then when we talk to, or read Quran with interpretation, which is a little more, focused on human behavior, we realize that, things aren't. So
Again, this is a
even hijab, okay, to give an example, there's so many people who say that covering your head or not wearing nail polish while doing wuzu is, your wuzu is not accepted. So does that fall in the God domain category as well then?
No, that does not, because you see, when people say this, they think that this is how God has done this. It's not that they are doing it out of their own selves. I mean, it is an erroneous interpretation, but they think that this is what God meant or implied. So what they are doing is they are deducing something. They are making an inference, which is a wrong inference, but nonetheless, it is an inference. It's not that they are doing something on their own behalf. It's not that they claim that, well, I am making this prohibited or not. They say that this is what God has made or God should have made. So it's like a deduction that they make. So it cannot be regarded as an act of polytheism. All that it can be said about it is that It's a wrong interpretation, or it has an erroneous basis. It's a wrong opinion. So that is how we should deal with these things.
The third and the fourth rakat of the namaz, which has 4 rakats, are we supposed to recite only the Surah Fatiha in that, or we can recite anything else?
So we don't have any explicit direction in this regard from the Prophet. So there are both opinions. Some people add a surah from Surah Fatiha, some don't. So you can choose either of one of them, because we don't have any explicit guidance from the Prophet.